So I am glad to present our next speaker, Rachel Tansiringan. I hope that okay, correct. And her paper is The Colonizing Wellness Through My Practice of Pangalaya in the Context of Ginhawa. So thank you, and I give you the word.
Okay, so first, thank you, Kimberly, for that therapeutic movement workshop, and I think it's pretty connected to what I will share with you. So let me share my screen first. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so first, good day. Well, it's afternoon here, so good morning to the others. I would like to introduce myself. Yeah, so I'm Rachel Tansiringan and I'm from the Philippines. I'm a freelance writer researcher and I'm also a member of a performing group called Contemporaryong Gamelan Filipino. So it's a contemporary music and dance ensemble that makes original pieces inspired by traditions in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. So here is my presentation. It's a research, and I would like to think that it's still ongoing. So it's titled Decolonizing Wellness through my practice of pangalay in the context of ginhawa. So there are two unfamiliar words. So I will first introduce you to pangalay. So pangalay is a traditional dance style practiced by the Tausug in the Sulu archipelago. This insert goes here. And I live here in Manila. That is just a context. And pangalay is related to other dance styles in the Sulu archipelago, such as pentak, igal, and others. So how does it look like? So here, that's me during the pandemic. So pangalay is described as a dance with slow movement, and you have that up and down motion of the body mimicking the waves. And you can also see bent knees, curved hands, and even curved body lines. And it's very reminiscent of other Southeast Asian dances. And so the gestures, sometimes it mimics birds or wind. And traditionally, it's a solo dance performed in private and public celebrations in the community. So it's performed in weddings, birthdays, and it's also improvised. It depends on how the dancer connects with the music and also their virtuosity, musicality. And the usual music accompaniment is an ensemble, a gong ensemble. So you have this set of gongs called kulintang and the bigger one and also a drum. So that's the usual. And learning that the dance style is from Sulu, you might ask, and I live in Manila, you might ask, how did I encounter and learn the dance? So, I encountered Pangalay in 2019 in a workshop called Salimbayan Dance for Wellness. It was held in my, in the university where I studied, and it was from February 22 to May 17, 2019. And then this is the photo of the workshop. This is the recital. And most of the participants are actually older than me. So a lot of them are already in their 30s to their 60s. And so the facilitators were from Alun Alun Dance Circle. It's a non-profit organization promoting the professionalization and preservation of Pangalay, founded by students of Ma'am Ligaya Fernando Amilbangsa. And Ma'am Fernando Amilbangsa is one of the most prominent dancer researcher of Pangalay in the Philippines. And she's actually also from the Manila area, but she went to Sulu Archipelago after she married Datu Kunjungan Amil Bangsa, which who's from a Sultan family in Sulu. And she saw Pangalay there. She was enchanted by it, and then she wanted to learn and also share it to other Filipinos. And so she formulated a teaching method called Anil Bangsa Instruction Method or AIM. And it's different from the usual watch and learn, observe and learn method in Sulu because its core principles is more on breathing. So you sync your movements with your breath, and then you also have flexibility exercises. And I continued practicing pangalay, and then in 2020, when COVID-19 pandemic happened, ADC, Alun Alun Dance Circle, invited me again to have this pay as you can workshop, and we called it Pangalay Quarantine, and through Google Meet or Zoom. We just danced through the pandemic and just learn more movements in the Pangalay dance style. And my experience led me to research how Pangalay gave me ginhawa, and it's my thesis. Stories from Off My Body, Pangalay in the context of ginhawa to the Anil Bangsa instruction method. And before actually having the thesis proposal term, I used dance for wellness because the workshop was called Dance for Wellness. But I felt that the term wellness didn't really capture what I was experiencing. And so I encountered the concept of ginhawa through discussions with my Pangalay teachers. And I realized that ginhawa was more appropriate to describe what I was experiencing. And I wanted to revisit that point. I wanted to see how I realized that it was not really wellness, that it was ginhawa that I was experiencing during when I was dancing pangalay. So with this, my presentation, I asked, how did my pangalay practice decolonize my understanding of wellness? Well, the shortcut answer would be by teaching me the concept of ginhawa. And I have these three guiding um, guiding methods and theories. So one would be critical autoethnography, my research method, and it's the writing of oneself to understand the cultural phenomenon with an awareness of one's position. So position relates to socioeconomic background, gender, ethnicity, and I know also that I am writing about my body's dance experience, and so I am anchoring my study in Merleau-Ponty's embodiment, which states that the body and mind are integrated in experiencing the world. So we see the body as a valuable source of knowledge, as valuable as written records and such. And decolonizing here is more about confronting, resisting, unlearning, and reimagining the dominant and oppressive Eurocentric principles, values, norms, and uh, perspectives brought upon by colonization. So, in this case, for my study, I'm focusing on my understanding of wealth. So, what is wellness exactly that I am talking about? Um, so this is actually a concept from developed by American thinkers, but it has its roots in the ideas on health from India, China, ancient Rome, and Greece, and it was later developed into the concept, the wellness concept that we know of today. So starting from 1950s, Halbert Dunn, he stated that wellness was the complete opposite of illness, and he emphasized that the environment affects health. And so this idea, John Travis was very intrigued by it, and he pioneered a wellness center, and he preached that wellness is beyond the absence of diseases, but it's also about a good quality of life. And so the center appropriated yoga and mindfulness meditation as wellness activities. And so to define it, according to the Global Wellness Institute, wellness is the individual's endeavor or a pursuit of holistic health. So holistic health is a state of well-being in all aspects of life, such as physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, and environmental. And one can pursue such a state of well-being through lifestyle choices, such as nutrition, exercise, and sleep. And fast forward to 2014, the Global Wellness Institute, it was established in Florida, USA, and it's a non-profit organization researching and advocating wellness to government and private units worldwide. And they provide reports on the growth of wellness in several countries by measuring the performance of wellness economies. Wellness economies are industries that implement programs to provide options for people to integrate wellness in their daily lives. And it has 11 sectors: mental wellness, physical activity, wellness real estate, workplace wellness, wellness tourism, spa economy, thermal mineral springs, healthy eating, nutrition, and weight loss, personal care and beauty, preventive personalized medicine and public health, and lastly, traditional and complementary medicine. And all of these sectors aim to offer wellness products, services, and facilities. And one of the reports, one of the countries that have reports with Global Wellness Institute is the Philippines. So what is wellness in the Philippines? So actually, the wellness in the Philippines, it was embraced since the 1960s, but it's in the context of tourism, and it was brought by American and European tourist patients who visited the country in search of Catholic faith healers. So, side note, the Philippines is a former colony of Spanish and then Americans, and then for a short while, Japanese. And so this wellness in tourism, it continues even today. In 2004, the Department of Tourism launched the Philippine Medical Tourism Program, which was embraced by the private sector. And an example would be the farm in San Benito Lipa, which offers spas, recreational activities, yoga classes, etc. And this year, the Department of Tourism aims to continue to develop that medical wellness tourism catered to foreigners. So they ensure that hospitals should be close to the airports, treatment costs should be lower compared to Western Asian neighbors, and there's like a focus on improving um, places where the patients can recover. And so this idea of wellness in tourism continues up until today. And wellness in the health sector is sadly just during the COVID-19 pandemic, they launched this program for health workers only. So that's the only record of wellness that was a wellness program initiated by the Department of Health here. And so upon reflecting, yeah, so the Philippines is working with the Global Wellness Institute, particularly the Department of Tourism is working with the Institute to measure the growth of the country's wellness through wellness economy, which is expenses and income. And I felt that wellness uh, that is presented, it's attainable through consuming and availing products and services, subscribing to programs. And it's also solely the responsibility of the individual. As stated in the past slide, that wellness is on the person's choice. It's pursuit. It's about lifestyle choices. And for me, that understanding of wellness does not really consider systemic hindrances to one's holistic health, such as poverty, oppression, and other things like that. And so for me, this wellness concept that we have in the Philippines is consumerist and individualist. And while I do agree that in wellness, I do agree that health is multidimensional. I still find the concept quite oppressive because my well-being is solely in my hands, and I have to have money to afford it. And now I'm bombarded with Western-centric health information, such as superfoods that I can't really find in my local supermarket because they are imported and they are very expensive. So I thought that wellness became something that if I have the money, I can have it. So wellness became burden. And so I wanted to take an action. And one of that would be attending the Salimbayan Dance for Wellness. And I thought that it was wellness that I was experiencing in my practice with Sangalay because it was my choice. I attended the workshop. I was lucky because the workshop was free. The second one was pay as you can. But yeah, and I also thought, well, the workshop gave me another way to exercise and socialize with other people. And I thought it was also wellness because the title of the workshop has the term wellness. So naive back then. But choosing to go that free workshop actually liberated me from the burden of wellness and gave me something else, which is ginhawa. So ginhawa is an indigenous Filipino concept of holistic health. And according to the linguist Consuelo J. Paz, ginhawa, the term, is actually present in the vocabulary and the lifestyle of ethno-linguistic groups all over the Philippines. And I am Tagalog, and the meaning of ginhawa, it pertains to a feeling of lightness and comfort and breaking out of poverty even, and it's also related to recovering from illness and also alleviating a burden. So it can be related to like forgiving someone. So, oh, I feel ginhawa or I am maginhawa in a state of being like ease and comfort because I already forgiven a person. And in Bisaya, according to Jude Salazar in the 851 dictionary that he found, ginhawa is to breathe and to live. And you can also see that there are other variations of the word in several languages in the Philippines. Hiligaynon, Ramblanon, Sorsoganon, Cebuano, Waray, Aklanon, Kapampangan. And the manifestation of ginhawa is indeed multidimensional, just like well. And ginhawa may be seen in having daily necessities, so food, shelter, even also the means to go to school and having land to till. And then it's also about being in harmony with oneself, in harmony with one's community and environment of supreme being. So there's like a lot of similarities in this case for wellness and ginhawa. But attaining ginhawa is more stresses more on the interconnectedness of one's health to the health of other people, health of your environment. And so one of the things that attaining ginhawa is more on building and maintaining peaceful relationships between people, environment, the spirits or supreme being. And one example of how people try to attain ginhawa is through communal voluntary work. In Tagalog, we call it bayanihan. And this one, it's more about helping your neighbors. So the receiver and the giver of help, they it's beneficial for the both of them since you show support with each other. You also see that you value each other as part of the community, and that also goes with the relationship of man and environment. That they respect environment through proper use of land, doing rituals before harvesting and cutting, and we see here that giving ginhawa is relational and reciprocal. So when one strives for their ginhawa, they recognize that their ginhawa is interconnected with other living beings' ginhawa. And this ginhawa is also used in the narratives of revolutionaries. So during the Spanish colonization, a Filipino revolutionary group called Katipunan had a narrative for people to join their cause for the freedom of the country. And they used the Dr. Jose Rizal, so who's the national hero of the Philippines. They used Rizal's tripartite view of the country's history. So the structure is light, dark, and light. The first period or light, it's about the pre-colonial times wherein people were dignified, respected, connected through trade with other countries and also have advancing civilization. But when the Spanish colonizers uh, arrived in the Philippines, it became darkness, became dark, since they brought poverty, injustice, and oppression to the people, even though that they proclaim that they are bringing wellness through religion and establishing a government. And finally, third part is actually a vision, their hope of a better future, which is light, which is about the Philippines being liberated from the Spanish oppressors. And it's a society that has ginhawa. So it's people having access to their basic needs, they're free and they're dignified. So in contrast to wellness, ginhawa is more communal. And instead of um, trying to consume, trying to receive this thing by paying things, it's more of giving and generous. And in its very core, ginhawa is itself life. It's about breathing as an awareness that you are a living being, that you are breathing and you are breathing with other people and you are trying to breathe comfortably, to breathe freely. And so we see that Ginhawa is indeed built on the interconnectedness of living beings. And thus it can only be attained through communal effort. And this is what I experienced during my Pangalay practice. But how so? Where is Ginhawa in my Pangalay practice then? So as a disclaimer first, before I share these, first, I am not a native Tausug. I learned the dance in Manila. I am Tagalog, and I would say that my experience of Pangalay and Ginhawa is definitely different from the experience of the Tausug, their of their dance style and of Ginhawa. And this is just one of my accounts, and I also recognize how we may have, uh, different our relationship in our country. It's a bit difficult since we have power relations. The Philippines is a Catholic, majority of the people are Catholic, and Tausug people are Muslims. And so my identity and their identity, we may have some other conflicts, but I am sharing um, this my story, because I believe that even though my story is very particular, there are some bits that are related to them. So, okay. So my realizations from Pangalay practice, that where I experienced Ginhawa. So I experienced Ginhawa in my practice through three things. And the first one would be breathing. So again, the core principle of dancing pangalay through the Anirbangsa instruction method was breathing. It was the internal music for the dancer, and it's also the key to achieving the continuous flow of movement. And breathing while dancing pangalay should be deep, slow, and mindful. And scientifically, such breathing is proven to relax the body and purge toxins. And I think we experienced that during the workshop. And we were also taught to be mindful of our movements. The second one is I know that I am breathing in a community. So in the workshop, our teacher coaches us to listen to our breathing and listen to other people's breathing so that we also be synchronized. When we danced in the recital, we were moving um like the same time because we are listening to the breathing of each other and we are being mindful of that instead of counting. And so we see that yeah, breathing in a community, even though we had this workshop through Zoom as well, we try to breathe together and try to really share our lives during the pandemic, even though it's really hard, we process things. And that's the third one, sharing. When I visited Tawi-Tawi, or one of the island groups in Sulu Archipelago, I actually danced in a wedding of a Tattoo, and I shared my presence there. I shared by dancing. It's a way to congratulate the bride, the groom, and their families in their union. But in sharing my blessings through dance, I think they shared more, um, because they recognize me as a person and as a dancer, even though that I'm not a community member, even though that I lived thousands of kilometers away from them, I am still a living being that they share life with. And realizing this, in return, I know that while dancing in the Pangalay dance style, I am actually carrying their story, and it's my responsibility to know more of their story beyond their dances, to know their struggles like displacement and discrimination. And I am in the process of learning more about those stories. And so, with such, Pangalay taught me that holistic health and pursuing a state of well being should not let anyone be left behind. And unlike the Western concept of wellness that I see as a burden, ginhawa through my practice of Pangalay, I learned that it's about liberation. And I know I still have yet to learn more about these. But right now, from what I have learned, I will strive to dance right and speak for my ginhawa with the awareness that it is connected to other living beings ginhawa. And so I reflect, what is my ginhawa? My ginhawa is just about knowing that I am existing, that I am living. It's also about my access to healthcare. It's also about equal opportunities regardless of gender and socioeconomic status. It's also about freedom of expression, access to clean environment, and all of these things. It's not just me who needs those things, but also other people. And I also cannot attain all those things all alone. And so, by in reflection, I hope that the Philippines will shift the mindset from a consumerist and individualistic view of holistic health into ginhawa, which is communal, political, and decolonial. So as ginhawa is about liberation, I I invite, encourage, and hope that we may all strive to breathe with ease, with comfort together, and maybe share our lives with each other and aim for us to breathe freely in this world. Um, thank you. Maraming salamat. And these are my references if you're interested. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is some question. This is the moment.
Maybe not so much of a question, but I just thought it was really interesting and cool how you took this definition of wellness, which is like so commercially constructed, and uh really kind of like brought that into contrast of like what wellness is within a community. Um, I guess I don't think too often, particularly as American, how much like wellness is constructed as like a commercial thing to be sold. Um, and so it gave me a lot to think about, and like how do I create wellness in my community without, having to spend lots of money or like invest into that kind of like capitalist concept. So thank you for that.
Thank you as well.
Yeah, for me, it is something that I come thinking a lot about how we are used, like how the system gives solution to sustain the system who creates the problem. So we need this kind of wellness because we are in this situation. And, and so, yes, this is very clear for me. And what is very important for me now, because I am Italian, so I am European, not Anglo-Saxon, it's very different. But what I am trying to understand for myself is how we can take concept from other culture, like for example the one that you explain, or I'm working with other concepts from Latin America. How we can take this concept to create a different global world, in the sense that it's not just that in Philippines it works like that, or here it works like that. I think that is something human, you know. And so how we can think about other form of appropriation in a sense, but it's not appropriation because I want to take this mine, but it's like how we can rewrite the words together, no, as a humanity with concepts like this, instead of thinking, okay, this works in Philippines because this very culture, you know. I don't know if you understand what I mean, and what do you think about this?
Yeah, I do think I understand, but I think it's more about even though that I'm saying that the Western concept of wellness from America is very consumerist and individualist, and it's actually oppressive in, well, in my point of view, it's oppressive. And also, even my Pangalay teachers, they told me, yeah, they feel that they have to spend so much money to buy supplements, to go to programs just to feel, to have wellness. And I think, yes, first, healthcare and all those things, it's also very cultural, and the context of each country, it's also important in understanding how we provide, yeah, we strive to be well, to attain holistic health. But I also think that, yes, that's why we have these kinds of platforms to share ideas. And it's not really about, uh, I'm disregarding every other foreign concepts, but it's more of understanding. Okay, you have this foreign concepts. What are we can see how it's valuable, and it's if it's appropriate to the context of your country, and we can continually share that. So maybe through my presentation, some of you are like, uh, see how ginhawa, or the concept of ginhawa, it's, yeah, communal, about breath, about the interconnectedness of people. And I think we can continue to just share to each other, even though, yeah, I'm Southeast Asian country, and then we may have other ideas from Latin America, ideas from Europe, ideas from other parts of Asia, from Africa, and we can just see what is really like rooted in our culture, but we can also look at it globally, what works for uh, other countries, what works for with other contexts, and try to see if it's also appropriate for us, and we can just, share ideas. So I think, because wellness, it is a global thing, it's a global concern. So I think we can continue to share our ideas, and then think if these ideas really work. Yes, Sharon.
Yeah, hi. I just want to thank you so much for bringing attention to this. And it particularly hits home for me because I'm a Filipino American, second generation. So I really I really appreciated hearing more about the Filipino culture, and also because I happen to study holistic nutrition in the States, and I really definitely agree with you in terms of the commercialization of it all. It's something that definitely rubbed me the wrong way, and it also it resulted in my not wanting to pursue that typical career path in becoming, like taking on private clients. And it was all about the marketing and all about like the acquiring the income and everything. And again, pushing all of these superfoods and all of the things that I learned about. Yes, I appreciate what I learned about, but I don't necessarily agree with the methods. And so I currently live in Italy, and I want to tag along to what you said in terms of finding what happens in each particular place that you are in the world. And I've found that my own personal research and my own personal holistic path has been really, really helped by learning about the Italian culture and learning about what's already inherent in their culture, and in terms of wellness, for lack of a better term. But it's really more about the way that, of course, the Mediterranean culture has been able to find that balance for themselves. So it's really not about like trying to take something and marketing it. And again, I really appreciate you bringing attention to that in all different aspects.
Thank you.